Who do you trust to defend our NHS? Do you trust Keir Starmer? Do you trust Nigel Farage? Or do you trust neither of them? My name's Kat. I'm the director of We Own It, and on this channel, we talk about why public services should work for people, not profit, and how we can win campaigns to take them back. So today, we saw new polling in Labour List, which showed that nearly 70% of people trust Keir Starmer to keep the NHS free at the point of use, compared to only 41% for Nigel Farage. And so many people within Labour will think, oh, that's great news. But I'm going to argue today that it's really not something to be proud of at all. Labour created the NHS back in 1948, and many people voted for this government thinking that it would defend patients and not profit. And people have been incredibly disappointed. And I think the bar here is being set far too low. It doesn't matter if the NHS is free at the point of use, if 320 people a week are dying needlessly on their way to A&E. So if our NHS is underfunded and if it's wasting money on privatisation and it's not providing the service that it should be, then it being free is not much of a consolation, because we could end up with this two-tier system effectively in the future. And we know that private health lobbyists are trying to get their claws into government to achieve just that. And if we end up in a situation like the US, we will be spending as a country around double to get worse mortality rates, more people dying. That's why we have to defend the NHS as a service to be proud of and as something that is properly funded and working for patients and not for profit. So I want to talk about what Nigel Farage has said on this issue, and then I'll talk about why Keir Starmer doesn't have a leg to stand on. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments about who you do trust with the future of our NHS. Nigel Farage has said repeatedly that we might need a new model of funding for our NHS and said that it's not sustainable. He has sometimes suggested that people should have to pay out of their own pockets, and he has sometimes said that no, actually, he supports the principle that the NHS is free at the point of use. So it's not surprising if people are confused and if this polling shows that people don't know quite if he supports this principle.
You're saying you're completely committed to free at the point of delivery.
Yes.
You are not committed to the model as it currently exists and would be open, therefore, to an insurance-based model in the future.
Open to anything.
This whole conversation is such a distraction. In 2014, the NHS was the most efficient healthcare system in the world, and it's only because we've had a decade of austerity and privatisation that it's not ranking as highly as it used to be. There is nothing wrong with the model. In fact, the model of our NHS is something to be proud of. I believe the NHS is the best thing that this country has ever invented, and I think it's something that we should all feel really patriotic about, actually, and be defending. But Farage is saying that we have to look at that model. The thing is, he's often pointing to what happens in France. And what happens in France is that they spend around 40 billion more per year on their healthcare than we do. So around 20 to 25% more than we spend. If we spend that money, we would have better healthcare. The difference between the UK and France is less about the model and it's more about the money that goes into it. So Labour is highlighting that actually most people couldn't afford to get sick under reform because of the costs of what the NHS provides right now for free and the fact that actually this would just be really expensive for most people and their families. And this is a powerful advert and it's a powerful point that they are making. However, where did they get these figures? So the press release from Labour said that the figure of £129 for a GP appointment and the figure of the A&E cost of £1,368 were both based on United Healthcare costs, which is a private company. But if we look at that private company, they are actually one of the private companies that is bankrolling Labour. So John Armitage, who's a hedge fund manager who's invested $500 million into United Health, which is, of course, the largest healthcare insurer in the US. He has given Wes Streeting, the Labour Health Secretary, £95,000 since 2022. And the Good Law Project highlight the fact that Wes Streeting is actually 60% plus funded by private healthcare companies. So it's a little bit ironic if the figures that Labour is using for its advert against reform are actually from a private health company, which is itself giving money to the Labour Party in hopes of expanding its market and its profits. If Labour wants to defend its reputation as having not just created the NHS but protecting it today, it really needs to do much better. So I think we should stop having this distracting conversation about changing the model and start talking about where we can get the money from to invest into our NHS. Because if you invest in the NHS, you have a healthier population, you have a stronger economy. It is a good deal for this country. And Keir Starmer doesn't have a leg to stand on because he has the opportunity to do that right now. And he's not been taking it. There are 5 things that the government should be doing to defend our NHS for the future. Number 1, they should be ending all of the outsourcing that's going on right now. That would save around £10 million a week, which is enough to build a new operating theatre in an NHS hospital every single week. Number 2, the government should take a very clear position against private finance. They should not introduce any new private finance in the future, and they should be renegotiating PFI deals now. NHS trusts have had to spend up to 13% of their income. They've had to pay, in one case, 27 times over for buildings because of private sector finance making as much money as possible from this investment. It's a bad deal for patients, and it means that there's less money available for our healthcare. Number 3, the government should be defending our NHS against Trump and defending the National Institute for Clinical Excellence and making sure that our drug prices, our medicine prices, don't get affected by what Trump wants to do in terms of pushing up the prices, because that will make our whole healthcare system more expensive. Number 4, the government could put VAT on private healthcare. That's a straightforward increase in the money that the NHS can get, with people who think that they need to use private healthcare paying a bit more so that the NHS can function better. Number 5, the government should look at wealth taxes. If you look at the richest family in the UK, they have around 35 billion in wealth. That is almost the same amount of money as the sum we would need to get up to the level of investment that France has. So I think we have to move away from free at the point of use as the right way to think about the NHS. What we need is a properly funded health service that is not wasting money on privatisation. A health service that works for us, the patients, rather than for profits. And that's what Keir Starmer and his government should be trying to achieve. And they have time to achieve that, but not if they're just congratulating themselves that they have a slightly better reputation than Nigel Farage.